Hello everybody, and welcome to my second try of creating an ASMR video. I deleted the first video due to some heavy mistakes I was unable to deal with. So in this video I'm going to take it a little easier and read something for you. I'm aware of the fact that there are hundreds and hundreds of ASMR readings. But to be honest, I don't really care. I just wanted to do one myself. I'm going to read Psycho by Robert Bloch. And before you now say that Psycho is improper for ASMR, I have to say that I am a German and this is one of 2 English books I have. The other one is a book about English grammar. And I suppose you don't want to hear about English grammar in ASMR. Or if you actually want to hear about English grammar, then just let me know. Okay, I'm going to start now. 1. Norman Bates heard the noise and a shock went through him. It sounded as though somebody was tapping on the window pane. He looked up hastily, half prepared to rise, and the book slid from his hand to his ample lap. Then he realized that the sound was merely rain, late afternoon rain striking the parlor window. Norman hadn't noticed the coming of the rain, nor the twilight. But it was quite dim here in the parlor now, and he reached over to switch the lamp before resuming his reading. It was one of those old-fashioned table lamps, the kind with the ornate glass shade and the crystal fringe. Mother had had it ever since he could remember, and she refused to get rid of it. Norman didn't really object. He had lived in his house for all the 40 years of his life, and there was something quite pleasant and reassuring about being surrounded by familiar things. Here everything was orderly and ordained. It was only there outside that the changes took place. And most of those changes held a potential threat. Suppose he had to spend the afternoon walking, for example. He might have been off on some lonely side road or even in the dark. You could catch your death of cold that way, and besides, who wanted to be out in the dark? It was much nicer here in the parlor under the lamp with a good book for company. The light shone down on his plump face, reflecting from his rimless glasses, puffed the pinkness of his scalp beneath the thinning sandy hair as he bent his head to resume reading. It was really a fascinating book. No wonder he hadn't noticed how fast the time had passed. It was The Realm of the Incas by Victor W. Van Hagen, and Norman had never before encountered such a wealth of curious information. For example, the description of the Cachua, or victory dance, where the warriors formed a great circle, moving and writhing like a snake. He read, the drumbeat for this was usually performed on what had been the body of an enemy. The skin had been flayed and the belly stretched to form a drum, and the whole body acted as a sound box while throbbing came out of the open mouth. Grotesque, but effective. Norman smiled, then allowed himself the luxury of a comfortable shiver. Grotesque, but effective. It certainly must have been. Imagine flaying a man, alive probably, and then stretch his belly to use it as a drum. How did they actually go about doing that, curing and preserving the flesh of the corpse to prevent decay? For that matter, what kind of mentality did it take to conceive of such an idea in the first place? It wasn't the most appetizing notion in the world, but when Norman half closed his eyes, he could almost see the scene. This throng of painted, naked warriors wriggling and swaying in unison under a sun-drenched savage sky, and the old crone crouching before them, throbbing out a relentless distended belly of a cadaver. The contorted mouth of the corpse would be forced open, probably fixed in a gaping grimace by clamps of bone, and from it the sound emerged. Beating from the belly, rising through the shrunken inner orifices, forced up through the withered windpipe to emerge amplified and in full force from the dead throat. For a moment, Norman could almost hear it, and then he remembered that the rain has its rhythm too, and footsteps. Actually, he was aware of the footsteps without even hearing them. Long familiarity aided his senses whenever Mother came into the room. He didn't even have to look up to know she was there. In fact, he didn't look up. He pretended to continue his reading instead. Mother had been sleeping in her room, and he knew how crabby she could get when just awakened. So it was best to keep quiet and hope that she wasn't in one of her bad moods. "Norman, do you know what time it is?" He sighed and closed the book. He could tell now that it was going to be difficult. The very question was a challenge. Never had to pass the grandfather clock in the hall in order to come in here, and she could easily see what time it is. Still, no sense making an issue of it. Norman glanced down at his wristwatch and then smiled. "A little after 5, he said. I actually didn't realize it was so late. I've been reading. Don't you think I have eyes? I can see what you've been doing." She was over at the window now, staring out at the rain. "And I can see what you haven't been doing too. Why didn't you turn the sign on when it got dark? And why aren't you up at the office where you belong?" "Well, it started to rain so hard, and I didn't even expect there'd be any traffic in this kind of weather." "Nonsense. That's just the time you're likely to get some business. Lots of folks don't care to drive when it's raining." "But it isn't likely anybody would be coming this way. Everyone takes the new highway." Norman heard the bitterness creeping into his voice, felt it welling up into his throat until he could taste it and tried to hold it back. But too late now, he had to vomit it out. "I told you how it would be at the same time when we got that advance tip that they were moving the highway. You could have sold the motel then, before there was a public announcement about the new road coming through. We could have bought all kinds of lands over there for a song. Closer to Farewell, too. We'd have had a new motel, a new house, made some money. But you wouldn't listen. You never listen to me, do you? It's always what you think and what you want. You make me sick." "Do I, boy?" Mother's voice was deceptively gentle, but that didn't fool Norman. Not when she called him boy. 40 years old and she called him boy. That's how she treated him too, which made it worse. If only he didn't have to listen. But he did. He knew he had to. He always had to listen. "Do I, boy?" she repeated, even more softly. "I make you sick, huh?" "Well, I think not. I don't make you sick. You make yourself sick. That's the real reason you're sitting over there on the side road, isn't it, Norman? Because the truth is that you haven't any gumption. Never had any gumption, did you, boy?" "Okay, I have to stop right now. And I hope you'll like it. I'm sorry for the bad imitation of the mother. I probably should have brought a woman to speak that part, but, you know, since I live alone, that's a little difficult to manage. See you soon. Maybe I will continue reading Psycho. Maybe I will read another book. However, I wish you a very nice day. And I hope you will come back again. Bye-bye.